a series that's been going strong since 1971. Oh, with like small break in the 90s, but whatever. Who's keeping track, right? Alright. Them. Spawned from the mind of visionary mangaka Shotaro Ishinomori, this series has been captivating the minds of audiences young and old for literal decades now. And to be honest, I used to be on the outside of this series and its fandom. Beyond the fact that the series just isn't as popular as other Japanese media here in the States, I used to think that I, didn't or wouldn't like Kamen Rider. Like many other kids growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s, I grew up seeing Power Rangers absolutely fucking everywhere, and when I was young, like many of the other boys my age, I absolutely loved it. But as I grew older, I started to fall off the bandwagon, and, well, when I fell off, I fell hard. For years, I always said whenever my other weeb friends would ask me if I liked Tokusatsu, I'd tell them that I didn't because it felt too much like a blatant kids show. And by the way, my only frame of reference at this point was Power Rangers and Super Sentai. So, for me particularly, not a good first step, and while there is nothing wrong with liking kids shows, I mean, one of my favorite Kamen Rider seasons is 01, and that's like the most kids show they've gotten, at least until Gotchard came out. Huh. We'll get to it. But if I can help it, I don't like being constantly reminded of this fact. But one day, everything changed. Well, you see, back in 2020, there was this little thing going on. Not sure if y'all remember it or not, but there was a bit of a... what was it again? Oh, right. The end of the fucking world going on outside. So, like many other people around that time, I had nothing better to do than sit around watching TV all day. Now, I didn't fall particularly deep into this rabbit hole I'm going to talk about, but I had some friends who tried real hard to push me in. And if you were around on the internet back then, you probably figured it out. I'm talking about VTubers. Didn't really get much into it. I don't really watch streams, which is funny because I'm a streamer. Except for one particular day when I had a certain video pop up in my recommended on YouTube. Shout out to Iron Mouse, though she definitely doesn't need it. I just like to give credit for pushing me into the deepest pit of debt I have fallen into since I got into Gundam. Big thanks. Unironically, though, this series is great. Thank you for getting me into this. Anyway, after watching all of the Kamen Rider openings through that video, I got somewhat interested. I mean, the music is amazing, and even my cold, jaded heart had to admit that, okay, some of those suits looked fucking awesome. And then the next domino fell. Another creator named Marco Satsu. Now, if you don't know this one, I can't blame you if you're not already a Toku fan. But if you are another Toku fan, I do hold it against you. Go watch his stuff, it's great. But through his history of Kamen Rider series, I got a better feel for some of the shows and what they were about. Needless to say, my interest was only piqued further, and the rest is a tale as old as time. I watch Kamen Rider, and my money disappears as more and more of them appear on my shelves. There's 5 of them now. There's a 6th on the way. Now, to be honest, I got into this series super late. 01 was already finishing by the time that I even knew what a Kamen Rider was. So instead of watching things in order, I just kind of hopped around, double to Xaid to Build to Gaim to Forze to O's. But after I went through and watched pretty much every series with the exception of Hibiki, Kuga, Agito, most of Ryuki and Faiz, I decided to finally start from the beginning, watching Kuga. And that's where I had a wonderful idea. Well, why not watch all of the seasons in order? From Kuga into Agito and then on to Ryuki and so on and so forth. Watching all of the main series and important side content. That way I could have something of the feeling older fans got watching their favorite actors and characters come back for cameos and crossovers and whatnot. I then had an even better idea. Or an even worse idea, I don't know how this is gonna go. Why not bring all of you along for the ride as well? Get it? Ride. Okay, with that out of the way, this is how things are gonna be. First of all, I'm not giving a scene-by-scene retelling of these stories. I will be going over basic plot, including spoilers, as necessary in order to give a good idea of what the show is like, as well as giving examples when I start getting into detail. Long story short, I'm only going to be giving you what you need. This is a journey we're taking together, not a lecture. So if you're not keeping up, you'll be getting left behind. I highly recommend you watch these shows yourself before watching my videos, as in my opinion, there is no such thing as a Kamen Rider season that is not at least worth your time. Except for maybe Agito? I really don't like Agito. Anyway, secondly, I will be covering most, not all, of the side content that is available for a series. That means I'll be covering movies and crossovers, canon or non-canon. I will also be covering most of the specials, but don't expect me to go super in depth unless I really like it, or in the cases where they are actually canon. I'm looking at you, Writer Time. However, I will not be covering manga or novels again unless I really like them or they're particularly interesting. And I'll be breaking that rule pretty much right off the bat in Kuga, as it actually has a full manga adaptation that I really like. But that's a story for later. I will not be covering any of the SIC Hero Saga material with the exception of mentioning the other alternate endings for Ryuki when we get to it. I will also be taking a page out of History of Kamen Rider's book, as I will not be mentioning crossovers that involve a writer I am currently covering until I get to the series that the movie is most closely tied to. That means, don't expect me to start covering Heisei Generation's final right off the bat just because Kuga's in it. I will be doing my best to release these videos on a month-by-month basis. We'll see how well that works out. But before we get started on our journey with Kuga, I think we should get a little bit of background on the road we're skipping over. Kamen Rider is a Japanese tokusatsu series owned by Toei and created by legendary mangaka Shotaro Ishinomori, which started airing on April 3rd of 1971. And that's enough of this Wikipedia bullshit. Okay, so I threw a whole lot of stuff at you in a single sentence without any context, so let's start with the context. I'm gonna assume you all know what Japan is, and if you don't, well, how did you end up watching this video? So let's move on to Tokusatsu, which I'll be referring to simply as Toku from here on out to avoid slurring my words like Kanzaki. Toku is a form of Japanese TV drama that is usually marketed towards kids and usually focuses on superhero characters fighting monsters and villains, oftentimes within a rubber suit. It's kind of like if a soap opera and a Marvel movie had a baby, and it is amazing. Kamen Rider is actually within a subset of the genre known as the Henshin Hero Show, with Henshin literally just being the Japanese word for transform or transformation. Oh, and just by the way, as a Gundam fan, I am legally obligated to inform you of this. The first person that refers to Kamen Rider as a transformer gets shot. I don't make the rules, I'm just happy to enforce them. Anyways, if you still can't get the idea for some reason, I'm sure you know Power Rangers, right? Well, Power Rangers is just Super Sentai with new voiceover and new out-of-suit scenes. And Super Sentai, alongside many other shows, is a Henshin Hero show. So, now that we've got the basics of the basics out of the way, what makes Kamen Rider different from other Toku shows? Well, beyond being one of the only ones I can stomach watching, with the notable exception of Garo and Gridman, which I hope I get to cover those one day. Back on track. Well, I don't know how to tell it to you, really, other than it's just got this different kind of vibe to it. As much as it's looked down upon within the fanbase to call Kamen Rider a dark or mature show, I really do believe that one of the things that make this franchise so special is its willingness to actually be dark or mature more often than many of its peers. One of the base ideas that Kamen Rider has always been built off of is the idea of the tragic hero. Not in the way that the hero falls or makes some great mistake, but the tragedy of being a hero. Fighting a war that no one knows about or acknowledges, where you could die at any moment and all of the things you've done and the good that you did will be gone forever. That maybe the hero doesn't want to fight, whether that's because they're pacifistic in nature or that they simply don't like hurting people regardless of what they've done. And they still have to anyway. Those aren't just random thoughts I had, by the way, those are real themes from the shows. I'll let other fans in the audience try to figure out which one is which, I'll respond if you comment and get it right. Those themes are exactly why I love Kamen Rider. Aside from being really cool to watch two men covered in spandex kick the shit out of each other. Okay, so I know I said a whole lot of pretentious shit and then ended it with that, but sometimes I just want to watch Karate Bugman. It doesn't always have to be deep, I just like that it can. Okay, so now that we've got the boring stuff out of the way, let's get this adventure started. I won't be waiting up for you, as I'll just be passing through as we start our journey through 2 decades of Kamen Rider without fear or pain with Kamen Rider Kuga.